All right.
Can you say white rights, Xanderhal? Do white people have rights?
I love white people, okay? I love white people. White rights, of course.
I thought you were joking. I thought the vape nation was the worst part. I thought that was as bad as it gets. When you were like, oh, it gets worse, I was like, oh fuck, that vape nation shit is pretty cringe. What the fuck is happening? What is happening right now? Let me say a couple things right out of the gates here, everybody, and I'm being very serious about this. A lot of people are consistently trying to get me to publicly cancel creators as a whole. Creators who are on the left, by the way. I got a lot of emails when ContraPoints was going through the entire Buck Angel thing. I have never stopped receiving emails about Vosh. I don't really ever talk about Xanderhal, which is why I think I don't get a lot of emails about commenting on Xanderhal. In all the cases of, publicly condemning content creators on the left, a lot of it I think is performative, or at least what people are looking for. If someone is just going to be like, I condemn this, I utterly condemn this, and I condemn this creator, rather than calling out takes, just calling out, like, the whole thing can seem a little virtue signaling, and that's not what I'm really interested in with this platform. I think there's no doubt that people, especially content creators, should be held accountable. I mean, that's what I talk about all the time here. It's kind of my shtick, talking about how content creators need to be held accountable for the things they do. And I have no problem with that. I know Xanderhal has been involved in many drama cycles, time and time again, but I also am a firm believer in people being able to either change and or taking criticism. Like, please, content creators, I cannot stress this enough. Listen to criticisms. Every single criticism of you is not someone woke scolding. It's not an SJW trying to gain social credit points in the marketplace of ideas. There can be things that you are genuinely doing that are damaging, which, Xanderhal has done before, like the looking up of Blair White's dead name off stream was one of the things I think that happened recently. Stuff of that nature. That behavior, if it's called out, you should listen to the feedback and then be like, okay, well, here's the ways I want to improve. Because otherwise, if you don't ever listen to any, or you see all criticism of you as effectively being just woke scolds or woke scolding, doing woke scolding stuff, yeah, or the R-slur stuff, right? But the R-slur, that's a good example of someone taking in, a very large amount of people saying, like, it is damaging when you use the R-slur, especially when you use it in a derogatory sense, because you're basically vilifying people for the way they were born. You wouldn't do that in a lot of other cases, right? You wouldn't do that in relation to someone being black, like you would be just called a racist, right? So that's why using it in that way is a bad thing. It's a net negative. But that being said, the Lauren Southern thing, this is a really dangerous part, or I guess moment in the history of the internet, because Lauren Southern has effectively for a while tried to rebrand herself as this new centrist. She came out and released a video that she got too embattled in political ideology and stuff of that nature. The whole thing is just her coding the fact that she may still believe a lot of these extreme things. Remember, she was part of the alt-right. She was touring with Stefan Molyneux, the guy who talks about brain weights being different for races. He says that black brains are smaller than white brains. Like, that level of, like, crackery. She was touring with him, and they were giving speeches about the Great Replacement Theory. She was making documentaries about the Great Replacement Theory. She hasn't taken those down. Like, those documentaries that she's made are still up. A lot of her worst stuff is still up on YouTube. But she now wants to be rebranded. And part of this whole rebranding is that she's a centrist now. She doesn't really follow along ideological side. She's not a Republican. She's not a Democrat. It's very, very Tim Pool-esque. And the whole thing is so that she can continue her, basically, empire bigotry, which is dangerous, which is really dangerous. But it is the reason why she wrote a children's book. It's also the reason why I think she's trying to sell this children's book as part of a tour. So when Xanderhal made a criticism of her children's book on Twitter, she responded that she would agree to go on a show. I've watched the first half of this debate. I'm going to watch the second half of it now. What I have seen so far is that Xanderhal obviously came into this, I think, with two intentions. One, he does genuinely want to be able to push up against Lauren Southern's most treacherous and venomous beliefs, specifically when it comes to trans ideology, which they all seem really heavily focused on. And she says that she doesn't include trans ideology, as she puts it, in her book at all. but definitely uses the M and the F to talk about the masculine and the feminine, being exactly the gender binary that people have pretty much disproven at this point. So still dangerous, still Lauren Southern, still an absolute, ghoul. Just trying to be a ghoul who's written a children's book. But that does not change the ghoul within. Like, the ghoul within lives on. All right, I'm going to finish the debate before I see her response that she put out. I think I've only got a little bit, like an hour left.
Not even a slight fraction of what Biden spent on the election, or even what CNN would spend on a couple days of media. They spent $100,000 on Facebook ads. And you're trying to allege that that's comparable to CNN spending 4 years of primetime TV trying to get their candidate elected? That's not even remotely comparable.
Why are you going back to the people? I'm not talking about... Holy shit, I'm sorry. I'm getting a little bit frustrated, but I'm going to try to keep my cool, okay? Why do you keep going back to comparing what came out from the Mueller investigation and the numerous investigations that were done by the U.S. government to find out whether or not there was collusion between Trump's administration, and his election?
You just admitted there was no collusion between Trump and the Russians. You were saying
Trump's administration and his running party.
So what was the exact thing that the Russians did that won Trump the election?
The Republican Party and Trump's administration, not Trump, people in Trump's administration worked with the Russians to hack the DNC to leak those emails from Hillary's private server.
So Hillary was doing illegal things, and that got exposed.
That's still collusion with the Russians. That's where the collusion thing came from.
Okay, so Hillary was.
Wait, I'm not trying to argue in favor of Hillary here. The election was back in 2016. I'm not trying to argue that. That's collusion.
So you're saying people having access to more information, real legitimate information about what the other candidate was doing, won Trump the election. Okay.
That's a full whataboutism.
People went to jail for colluding with the Russians for this. We're colluding with an enemy country to hack into a government party in our country. Well, I guess not our country, but in America, an enemy country. They colluded with another country. This is treason to leak information on another party. That's where Russiagate came from. That was what came of it. There were convictions. You can look it up. The court documents are public. There's some redacted stuff.
Michael Flynn needed to be pardoned. Like it's not like a conspiracy theory.
Okay, fine.
It's very
public. Also not a secret that, and that's why I don't think that people should have been banned. I'm not arguing that people should have been banned from Twitter or Facebook for talking about Russian collusion. I have never argued that once. You guys, on the progressive side of things, Democrats, big tech, are arguing that people shouldn't be allowed to talk about potential problems with
Roger Stone
the election that Biden won. No one has argued that people should be censored for talking about potential collusion with the Trump-Hillary election. It's only one side arguing there should be censorship. Well, I'm saying there is legitimate information showing CNN colluded to try to get Trump out of office, and you're not taking any of that seriously, and you are still supporting censorship of people who want to talk about it.
My concern isn't people who want to talk about it. I'm talking about it right now. My problem is when people deliberately spread misinformation. There were people on the right, on these platforms, that were saying the election was stolen. There was no evidence, no concrete evidence whatsoever that's been found that hasn't been debunked about there being that the Democrats stole the election, that Biden stole the election. There is no evidence whatsoever. It is completely unsubstantiated. And that rhetoric goaded conservatives into doing what they did at the Capitol. On the 6th.
So you don't think rhetoric of saying that Trump stole the election and that it was all the Russians that did it, which I do not agree. I don't think it was all.
I don't think it was all the Russians, but I think
you don't think that rhetoric can cause riots and cause disorder, which it did. I was there. I was at the riots that occurred and destroyed massive areas of DC when Trump went into office on his inauguration. And surprisingly, no one talked about that
93% peaceful,
the problem
overwhelmingly peaceful.
But the difference is that the left was right.
Misinformation. I don't have a problem with. So the left were right to do that. They were right to destroy.
No, why is she focusing?
They were right about Russian collusion.
The shiny thing.
Okay, so why were people banned right away before
any
investigation had properly taken place? And you know what? It looks like Trump supporters were right that there was some form of rigging as well, which is with CNN propaganda.
That's not what rigging is. We're talking about collusion, not rigging.
Hey, what up, left flank vets?
When it comes to nobody argued the election was rigged.
The Russians stole the election.
Nobody with any credibility argued that the Russians hacked into the election, for sure. Nobody argued that. There were random people on Twitter and Facebook, but we're talking about something that was confirmed by an investigation by the government. And something with no evidence.
There is an inconsistent application of the TOS, and we know that. They say they ban people for talking about people stealing elections when they are, and they say they ban people when they talk about starting violence. Let's look at a more solid example here instead of arguing the nuances of the Mueller report. Colin Kaepernick directly supported a revolution and violence against the government and has not been banned from Twitter. So you can agree with his support of that revolution, you can agree with his support of that violence, but that still points out what I'm saying here, which is there is an inconsistent application of the TOS.
So Colin Kaepernick's statement was, when civility leads to death, revolting is the only logical reaction. He said on Instagram and Twitter, the cries for peace will rain down, and when they do, they will land on deaf ears because your violence has brought this resistance. Wait,
That's almost identical to what Trump was saying.
That's not even close to what Trump was saying.
Trump was saying, well, the only
Do you think maybe there's a difference in power between the president of the United States saying that and the guy who sold the shoes on the TV? Do you think between those two there might be something a little worse about the president of the United States telling his many armed followers who are holding on to his every word?
only thing is he's directly saying we have to fight back, where Trump was saying this is what happens when you rig an election. And once again, people would disagree that civility leads to death, and people would disagree with Trump that the election was rigged.
Thanks, Visor.
Wait, so you think that him saying that people fighting for civil rights and Trump lying about the election being stolen because he's salty, and then those people proceeding to go to the Capitol and try to break in, which, by the way, they're all getting arrested. Their identities are being collected by the government, but they're being
It's
arrested.
crazy to me that
Do you think these are comparable?
Current rioting going on in Portland, and
Of course they're focusing on that. It was an insurrection attempt.
People who have taken over dozens of federal buildings over the last year, who created their own autonomous radical zone called Chaz, in which multiple people died, and they're not searching for any of those people. I'm saying everyone.
Again, yeah, a couple of those have happened. Who has more power? Who, like, is that genuinely what you think is the threat that's raining down over, like, the state power? Do you not actually respect the boys in blue or their many guns and tanks and military equipment? My word.
Tried to take over federal buildings, everyone, not just one side. It sounds to me like you're saying only one side should be arrested for doing that.
Yeah, no
and
shit.
The point here is,
yo, where were you in the Kaepernick Revolution of 18? Man, the world changed. The world changed. We burnt it to the ground.
is people are going to disagree with Trump's statements and cause and find them non-factual at all, and people are going to disagree with Kaepernick's cause and find them non-factual at all.
Okay, so yeah, she clearly is trying to do this this centrist grift, and yeah, it's still ridiculous. She's still landing in the same place she was on the political spectrum, you know, on the Venn diagram. It's still the same point. It's not moving. There's no budge here. It's still basically Lauren Southern being like, well, yeah, I mean, Trump said some things that may have incited some violence, but also Colin Kaepernick said some things that may have incited some violence on the behalf of the radical left. So, you know, Antifa, and you know.
And who knows? We're watching the case right
You
now.
understand-
And he may walk. And
You understand that the vast majority of these BLM protests, 93%, have been completely peaceful?
Okay,
That
good.
this is even close
oh
to
my
Trump?
gosh! And guess what? 99% of Trump rallies have been peaceful. Like, why are you?
Then
trying
why
to
are you
excuse
trying-
the
Whew, wow, she just, she pivots fast. Pivots really fast. Again, why are you comparing these things?
violence?
Because I'm talking about a
I'm not the one
specific
that's saying, I'm not the
occurrence.
one that's trying to excuse the. I'm not the
I'm
one that's
talking-
trying to excuse what happened at the Capitol.
I'm
saying
talking-
Trump rallies are peaceful. You're the one trying to
Because
excuse the BLM violence.
because I'm talking about a very specific riot that happened, an attempt to break into our Capitol, and there were people there that clearly had the intention to kill or kidnap government officials, people that are elected officials, and you're trying to paint it as though BLM is this violent movement. It seems that way, at least.
Okay,
I feel like it's a
not an
reasonable way to
assassin-
interpret it.
Was there not literally an assassination of a Patriot Prayer member by a Black Lives Matter member with a tattoo of BLM on his neck within the last year? Please do not gloss over political radicalism.
Do you think
and
this is
literal
even
fucking murder, 'cause I'm not
what is
doing
up with the
it. I'm not doing
whataboutism?
it. I am not doing it with the Capitol. I am saying that is wrong, and they shouldn't have done that, and they should have been arrested for that. The only thing happening here is you are not acknowledging the radicalism, the actual fucking terrorism and murder of individuals by Black Lives Matter, the taking over of federal buildings by Black Lives Matter, the literal autonomous zone created by radicals in which multiple people died.
Again, how much power do you think they have at the end of the day? Like, I really hope you're going to bring up something about, like, between the state power and the Black Lives Matter who have taken over certain areas. And, ooh, I'll even throw in, for the sake of, like, you know, generosity and good faith here, the autonomous zone. Sure, you can have that one too. So that's gone. That's gone. Yeah, just wiped away. Yeah, because the cops came in with all their guns and they were like, no, you're not doing this experiment anymore. It doesn't matter if the city council is like, let's try it out. Nah, see ya. We're shutting that down. So that's no more. All of the police stations that have been taken over by the radical left and Antifa, yeah, they're not taken over anymore. That's over too. All that, and the state still has absolute power. Yeah, that one's the thing too. Okay, so We're kind of in a dead end here.
Can you at least acknowledge that and acknowledge it was wrong? Because I've acknowledged the radicalism on my side and said it was wrong. This isn't a whataboutism. This is holding.
I don't know much about the chat.
Like, she's comparing the presidency of Donald Trump to fucking protesters. Like, it's ridiculous.
That thing, I think it was like pretty larpy and insubstantial, and I'm not a big fan of it. And I think that rioting typically is at best it's bad optics, and at worst it's probably not good because depending on where you're rioting.
What about murdering people? What about the
probably not good
man who was murdered?
Not good.
Probably not good.
No, not a fan of it. No, not very.
Okay.
Don't think highly of it.
Then we agree.
Okay, so we agree that. It is not comparable what Colin Kaepernick said to what Trump did when he was rallying his fan base to attack the Capitol.
I think both caused radicalism and violence, and both should be condemned. But I don't necessarily think either of them should be banned from Twitter. That's the only disagreement here, is that you're being inconsistent and I'm being consistent.
Okay, I'm pretty sure I've been pretty consistent, but all right. How have I been inconsistent?
In both instances, Trump rallied. I think it's questionable whether Trump rallied up people. I don't think he rallied up people to go and cause an insurrection. That's one interpretation of his tweet, saying he potentially defended it by saying this is what happens. But he certainly wasn't telling people to go do it, and he tweeted out after, be peaceful and go home. Whereas Colin Kaepernick has actively called for a revolution and actively called for violence. That's the difference between these tweets. And I'm not even saying Kaepernick should be banned or taken off Twitter if they actually follow their POS.
She's still regurgitating the same point. It's like, it's so tiring. Yeah, but one is the fucking president, and he has the army, the National Guard. The governors have the cops. Like, the state violence versus the Black Lives Matter, it's not comparable. And they were not led by Colin Kaepernick. Like, what the fuck? That's like a new conspiracy theory I haven't even heard before. What is she talking about? Yes, and then Colin Kaepernick rose and was broadcast on the Nike commercials and said, grab your arms, comrades, soon the revolution will begin.
But you are trying to argue that somehow Kaepernick should be absolved of this rhetoric that has led to murder,
Kaepernick
that has led to people's shops being burned down.
For starters,
she hasn't changed at all, and right behind you is the fucking Lauren pill, all right? This is the Lauren Southern pill, and this is what she wants to start giving to kids. Lauren Southern wants to give kids pills, and that is terrible, and it's right behind you. You can see it. You can see it in the form of this literature. Just waiting to indoctrinate children.
Colin Kaepernick.
You're excusing it.
Colin Kaepernick isn't the president, for one. Two, from my understanding, Colin Kaepernick
He still has
tweeted
mass
out.
amount of power over people and their opinions. Apparently more than the president himself, because he didn't get banned from Twitter, whereas the president lost his voice on every platform in the country.
The president had
nonsense. It's like absolute nonsense. Like, you know, if you polled the average person and told them who is Colin Kaepernick, some of them might not know. But if you ask them who is Donald Trump, the entirety of the planet knows who Donald Trump is. Everyone knows who the president of the United States is. Everyone listens, like, when he says something, whether they love it or hate it. Wow. Yeah, no, that's like, this is the definition of a false equivalence that is just so ridiculous and comical to the point of, like, it should be laughed out of the room. Like, you should not tolerate something like this. This is not reality. It's not grounded in reality. This is fear-mongering, and it's what she's always done. And she's just doing it now in a much better, like, little tiny, here, can we see it again? Little children's book version. Right there. There it is. You know, wrapped up in a cute little, I'm not actually talking about any of these things. Whoa, hey, you're the one bringing up trans ideology. I just wanted to talk about how there's a gender binary and there's only two and it's masculine and feminine, and that's why I chose M and F. But there's no politics. This is a kid's story. It's just fun for kids. You know. Like Dr. Seuss. I got the Lorax back there. It's just the kids book. There's no message in the Lorax. None whatsoever. We'll do a reading later. We'll see.
What does this have to do?
A consequentialist is somebody who judges like how bad something is based on the outcome of doing that thing.
Give me the context for it.
Okay. So what Trump did resulted in a full-scale attack on my capital in an attempt for an insurrection.
I'm sorry, but if you think those LARPers were actually going to take over the Capitol, it's
what do you when I say take over, they broke in. They got in, they were looking for Yes. They were there with handcuffs. They were looking to kidnap public officials. There was security cam footage. That's the closest. That is the closest
even for a centrist, trying to normalize that, like the other centrists, they just kind of took a step away. Like, look at Tim Pool. Tim Pool's just kind of like, I'm washing my hands this one. I'm just gonna say on camera, I have never asked anyone to do those kind of things. I condemn violence no matter who is doing it, especially like Antifa violence. Antifa violence is so bad. It's horrible. I'm gonna tell you every day about Antifa. I'm gonna show you like scary stuff about Antifa and Black Lives Matter protesters. I condemn that violence because it's horrible. It's the worst kind. It's just the worst kind of violence there is. That's the stuff you should be really afraid of and think about all the time as I show you this really scary footage. Yeah, but again, on both sides, violence bad. Violence bad. Ooh, woo.
That's the closest the Confederacy ever got to taking over the government, considering it was the first time in history that a Confederate flag flew in the American Capitol. So there's that. There's also security cam footage of security guards.
And 5 people dead.
There's security footage of the vice president having to run down a hallway because a bunch of the rioters came around a corner and they almost got him.
Someone sniffed AOC's shoes. No one was trying to...
They had to evacuate it.
I think what they did was wrong.
The police had to shoot them. 4 people died.
Oh, man. Throwing Ben Shapiro under the bus, Lauren, that's cold. That's cold. I didn't know. Conservatives do that to each other. Fuck. God damn. Hey, you heard it here first, everybody. Lauren Southern calls out Ben Shapiro live on the Xanderhal debate. That happened. That's a thing that happened. That's canon. Like, go spread it. That's fucked. I thought there was loyalty. I've said this before. They turn on each other so quick, so fast. But then right there, Lauren Southern calling out Ben Shapiro is clear as day like that. Man, cold-blooded.
A small part of you that thinks these LARPers were going to take over the government and start, I don't know, their wave the MAGA flag and start passing laws. You're insane.
Okay, I guess then I can easily respond. If you think that like a bunch of BLM protesters, like what is it, 8%, 7% of them, if you think that, or no, not even, how many percentage of them are peaceful? Let me just let me make sure. 93%. So
like all you have to do is be like 5 people died. They built a noose. they were chanting "Kill Mike Pence," the vice president of the United States. Like, hey, I got no love for Mike Pence. Mike Pence is a horrible ghoul, a literal ghoul. Like, he just looks like someone who just crawled out of the bottom of the earth to feast on the flesh of gay people. But, like, at the same time, you got to acknowledge that they were chanting, "Kill the vice president. Kill the vice president." Like, that is really fucked up. That's super I would think the Law and Order crowd would have a problem with that. And also with the cops they killed. That part, you'd think. Because they're cop killers. You know the song? Yeah. They're like the song Cop Killers because they killed cops. They killed police. I thought that was a bad thing. I thought that was the no-no. Isn't it? Isn't that supposed to be the thing that is like the worst thing that can happen ever?
If you think that 6% of these protests, if you think that 6% of these LARPers that are actually causing violence at these protests are going to really harm the country, then I guess you're taking it too seriously too. Because if we're going to apply it, then we might as well apply it equally. I take a full-scale attack on our capital way more seriously.
These LARPers wouldn't harm the country. I said they weren't going to take over the government. I think they did harm to the country as much as I think BLM has done
7%
more harm to the country. You've got this very neat trick of responding to things that I've never said.
I have debate tactics.
This entire debate. But yeah, no, I think both harm the country, and I've been consistent on this the entire time. But I think the degree of sustained protests and violence by BLM has added up to significantly more than the insurrectionists who just got way more media attention.
I feel like you've deliberately tried to downplay the effects of what the insurrectionaries at the Capitol did by calling them LARPers and saying they didn't even get close to anybody.
You used the word LARP first, mate. You're the one who called the people who made Chaz LARPers, and that's when I started using the word LARP. You are projecting all.
She's been in Australia for a while.
But you're trying to downplay what they did.
So when I use the word LARP, I'm downplaying. But when you use the word LARP,
I don't. Why are you focusing on the word LARP?
Led to the deaths of multiple
I know.
people.
Listen, Lauren. I know LARP is a funny word. It's fun to say. I'm not talking about them being LARPers. I'm not lasering on you calling those people LARPers. We're talking about what they actually did and what they intended to go there to do, and what 4 people died as well. The Capitol security had to shoot people because they were about to get in to an area of the building where there were elected officials, and those people were there. There were people out there with guillotines and gallows there saying to cut off Mike Pence's head. There were people searching around offices trying to take information from elected officials' laptops. There were people there with handcuffs looking to kidnap. Why else did they have handcuffs? Looking to kidnap elected officials. I think it's pretty different. Both are bad, but pretty different than rioting in the streets. Pretty different.
Okay, so once again, you have glossed over. Like, I still have not once tried to excuse the actions at the Capitol. I think that your number is potentially wrong because there were people who died of an overdose. They claimed a cop was killed by rioters who actually wasn't, and had to be corrected. This had to be corrected later by the media. Once again, I still have never said that that was okay.
Man, I mean, right-wingers just love going to the overdose defense, eh? It's like, oh, no, yeah, it's definitely the fentanyl. It's definitely the fentanyl that killed him, yeah. Not the whole strangulation. No, it's the drugs. It's the drugs, yeah. You
are trying to say that somehow that is different, or on some mass different scale, that all of the rioting that has gone on sustained for over a year, that has taken over multiple federal buildings, led to
93% of the protests have been peaceful. I condemn the rioting. I don't think it's good.
99% of Trump rallies have been peaceful.
We're not talking about Trump rallies. You're the one that brought up the comparison. I'm talking about a very specific event, and you're trying to draw a comparison between a ex-football player.
I'm talking about very specific events too. I'm talking about rioting that has been going on.
The rioting is bad, and I don't support it. The rioting is bad, and I don't support it.
Well, why are you trying to say it's
because you're trying to. You are.
What happened at the Capitol? When
it is. I'm not saying it's better. I'm saying it's not as bad. I'm saying it wasn't.
It's not as bad to assassinate people, to lead to multiple deaths, to kill.
I'm not talking.
It's not as bad to
I'm not talking about the one you're talking. Wait, why do you keep going? You're switching around. You're switching around from riots to a very particular.
At least is going to
They're both talking at the exact same time.
They were trying to. They were trying to kill people. They were trying to kill people. By the way,
BLM rioters successfully killed people.
And I don't support that. Whenever it happens, I don't support it. But why do you keep going? But how? Why is it? Why is it that you keep on bring up BLM riots, and then when I go back to the Capitol, then you bring up the instance where like they assassinated one guy, which is horrible, and I don't support it. But you keep on trying to bring up that one instance, and I guess ostensibly try to connect it back to Colin Kaepernick, when the reason for the riot was very specifically because Trump kept on saying the election was stolen, and they wanted to punish our government officials for not keeping Trump in office. Why do you think that these are comparable in terms of who holds the responsibility for what? Because that's what this argument was about.
Because you've got a bunch of Black Lives Matter rioters saying we need to hold the government accountable as well, with literal, I've seen guillotines with Trump's head in them. Like, you're making these comparisons.
Yeah, thanks, Tragan.
Where were those guillotines?
The Capitol, when it has happened the other way around a million times and sustained for over a year.
Where were those guillotines?
Okay, what we're arguing here, people can post pictures. There have been guillotines in the streets with Trump's head attached to
Where though? Not at the Capitol, while hundreds of people, thousands of people are trying to break in and are specifically out to capture and behead that particular elected representative.
Somehow it's worse if you take over a building with Nancy Pelosi in it than if you terrorize and take over some poor Black person's shop. You think it's worse just because fucking Nancy Pelosi is in the building, but it's
We're talking about which figure?
Shop in Minneapolis.
The reason why this argument happened, I think they're both wrong. Yes, the reason why this conversation came up is because you brought up Colin Kaepernick's quote. I brought up Trump's quotes.
The conversation we're actually having is whether it's okay to incite rebellion or not. I think it's wrong. Do you think it's wrong in any instance?
To incite rebellion?
Unless you can prove that the government is tyrannically, committing genocide and severely oppressive and all these things, and peaceful democracy is not an option, and you have gone past those points of being able to have civil debate and past those points of being able to, enact change in your communities, I do not think it's okay to incite civil rebellion, whether you're Colin Kaepernick or Donald Trump. What do you think?
Neither are okay, but the responsibility, or how comparable what Colin Kaepernick did to Donald Trump, the comparison there is not even close in terms of the outcome and how harmful it is.
Okay,
and the intention.
This is just like such a bad faith, false equivalency that I don't think it should be entertained. Like, I honestly, I don't think it's something you should talk about for like 20 to 30 minutes. I think at a certain point you should be like, this is just absolutely childish and like, ridiculous. Like, am I talking to a cartoon right now? It's hard to discern that, because right now you're trying to do something like compare an ex-football player with the president of the United States in terms of their power and messaging and their ability to incite insurrections and violence.
The question here, the question is whether Twitter applies the TOS appropriately and whether it treats people who incite rebellion with the same treatment, and they don't, and I've proven that. And you're just arguing.
The reason why Twitter didn't,
and also like, you don't need to like defend Twitter as a leftist. Like, Twitter fucking sucks. Twitter's garbage. The way they enforce their TOS is completely ambiguous. It's basically at their will. We have ceded the grounds of what is free speech to corporations who monetize our social interactions. It's fucked up, and that's what we should be working towards stopping. So I don't see any reason being like, well, it's good when it happens here and it's bad when it happens here. Of course, there's Schadenfreude when it happens to one of the bad people, right? Like, you're like, holy shit, crab dance, we just lost Nick Fuentes. Actually, no, he's still checkmark. But anyways, when that day comes, that's probably everyone will be like, holy shit, Nick Fuentes is gone. Yay, the evil has been defeated. But at the end of the day, they're not the ones that should be making that call. Like they shouldn't, you know, like if I'm arguing with a conservative about that, that's definitely one of the things I have to bring up, where like I'm not going to sit here and defend Jack Dorsey and his weird whale placenta empire, like living in baby fetuses and shit like that. Like he's a weirdo. I'm not going to defend him. He's bizarre.
The reason why Twitter didn't
All
ban
billionaires
Colin Kaepernick is, besides being like I don't even think there's that much attention on him anymore. Like he's not even nearly as popular and well known and being listened to as much as he was back in like 2018.
You're allowed to violate the TOS, which I don't think he is unpopular.
TOS is different from free speech. It absolutely is. However, it's become part of the saying, argument, and debate. Like it's been interwoven now, and that along with cancel culture, like these are very, very complicated issues that have been reduced to buzzwords, where we're like, oh, cancel culture, you got canceled. Oh shit, you're speaking out. You're an SJW. Things of this nature, right? We're talking about the fact that at the end of the day, these giant tech platforms are now necessary. We have to use them. Like you it's not even about being a social pariah. In a lot of ways, you can't even work. Like if you're working from home, you need the internet. You most likely need email. You most likely will have to be connected to some form of social media. I mean, you can avoid using all of them like some people do, but like it's unavoidable that you'll eventually have to use one of them, and then your speech will be public. And once your speech is public, they will determine whether or not you are allowed to say that in the public forum. Based on that alone, the tech companies, yes, it is a discussion about free speech because we have ceded that ground. So I think we need to get that back. Like that's why I'm for, making them public, putting them into public control.
You're asking why he wasn't banned. Tech. Should I ask you why insert lefty here that called for this like 100 follower account didn't get banned? Like, of course he.
I'm not the one arguing that the TOS is perfect. I'm the one arguing it's imperfect.
I'm not arguing that's perfect either. Then
you're arguing that it's been applied fairly.
No, I'm not. I've never said once that the TOS applied fairly.
So we agree. Okay, so we agree.
Straw man.
Okay. We're arguing over nothing. I think that the problem with Twitter and Facebook and YouTube giving them this much power over people's speech, first of all, I don't think private companies should have this much power over the discourse of the country. And second of all, I don't think they apply the TOS properly and they have bias. That's what the discussion was.
And that's where you're like, okay, wait, broken clock, what's happening here twice a day, right? But then if you try to push it any further, it's like, I think we should basically enact legislation that forces them to do what we want. And you're like, wait, no, that's not going to fix it. They're very powerful now. I mean, in U.S. history, this has happened before. There was a time when energy companies, you know, like the Rockefellers, were growing to such a size that it had to be broken up, you know, because they had a monopoly. And once they have a monopoly on something like this, something as important as our ability to interact with each other, like our actual ability to communicate with one another. Yeah, there's 3 or 4 companies that control all of that.
And we agree on it, apparently.
Okay, if we agree on that what Trump did was deliberate and was deserving of being banned, and what Colin Kaepernick did was probably something that Twitch could like logically ban him for breaking TOS, then I don't think we disagree, right?
We disagree on that, and you know we do because you're being inconsistent. But I'm trying to move on here. Overall, you'd give the book a positive rating, it sounds like.
Yeah, I like the book. The book's pretty good.
Thank you. All right. If you guys want to pick it up for your kids, you can get it on Amazon, The ABCs of Morality. It's got a positive review from...
No, that's the ending? I saw that clip online. Oh, fuck. No, fuck. I didn't know that was the end. Shit.
I think I'm going to add a review on the back that says, drops mad bars. And we might just change X's for Xanderhal in a lefty edition we release.
If that actually happens, I'm going to buy it. I will buy a lefty edition, or just in one single copy where X is for Xanderhal. I will buy it. Okay.
No, fuck. That's exactly what you wanted. That's exactly what you wanted. That's what you came on there to do. God damn it. And you liked my book. Yeah, it's good. Fuck. Like, achievement unlocked. Normalization, +1.
All right.
I'll buy a second copy.
I could actually make that happen. But I'll send you a copy as a thank you for having a fun little debate with me. Are there any, how long has it been?
I think it's been 2 hours.
It's been a couple hours, eh?
Yeah.
Are there any other last little notes you want to bring up? Because I did have a few little things I wanted to work on after this, but I can stay to...
I guess the final meme would be, do you vape?
I did.
Oh, you did?
I'm gonna expose myself here. I actually struggled a bit with smoking for a while. Not very trad life of me, you know. But yeah, I started vaping to try to mitigate that, and since then have managed to mostly get rid of.
What? This turned into Vape Nation? Hey, avowed alt-right white nationalist Lauren Southern who wants a white ethno-state. Do you like big rips or fat tugs? What are you about? Cool, bro. Let's get through this now.
Both in my life, but I did hear you in the preamble to this that you wanted me to do a little vape, and unfortunately I don't have a vape on me, so you're just gonna have to vape one out for me.
Alrighty, I appreciate the honesty. I was curious. My chat wants you to say a phrase. Would you say trans rights?
Oh no. I think trans people should have the same rights as anyone else. Why, like?
All right, that's
This is like equal opportunity.
Okay. If we are platforming some of the most dangerous actors on the right wing, ones who, yes, have been propagating great replacement theory, conspiracy theories, the performative trans rights at the end of all this is utterly meaningless. If she is actively working, both professionally and in her private life, I can't say, but professionally for sure, to marginalize that community. And then, of course, it does everything I'm worried about, which is try to normalize her, which is what this is all about, which is why she wrote this fucking children's book to put these kind of concepts into kids' bedrooms. So now all of a sudden, the M and the F in that book that talks about the masculine and the feminine, that's really fucking dangerous.
Is, you know?
Yep.
Everyone gets treated the same and judged on the same scale.
But can you say trans rights though? People want to hear the exact sentence.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good comparison. It's like Jimmy Fallon patting Trump on the head. The same thing. Like it normalizes that absolute wretch.
Okay, well, what does this mean on a larger scale? Because if it just means they have the same rights as everyone else, then trans rights, my dudes.
All right.
Can you say white rights, Xanderhal? Do white people have rights?
I love white people, okay? I love white people. White rights, of course.
I thought you were joking. I thought the vape nation was the worst part. I thought that was as bad as it gets. When you were like, oh, it gets worse. I was like, oh fuck, that vape nation shit is pretty cringe. What the fuck is happening? What is happening right now?
I think everybody deserves rights.
All right. There you go. That's good. I'm glad we agree. Look at this. This ended up being a really lovely agreement with just some friendly spats here and there.
Alrighty. Did you have a fun time?
I did. I had a good time. If you ever want to debate or chat about anything else, I'd be happy to.
Alrighty. Well, hopefully you have a good night. I appreciate you coming on, and maybe you can come on in the future for, I don't know, maybe we can do like a set topic or something, like the trans issue stuff. We can talk about that more specifically if you ever want to come on again. And yeah, have a good one.
All right. You too.
See ya.
Bye.
Wow. Oh, so it was just a friendly conversation. Got to plug the book. Got to get you to say white rights. And then you released the video the next day. So let's see what she had to say. I debated a breadtuber recap.
Hey guys, I just wanted to do a real quick recap of a 2-hour debate I just finished with a breadtuber named Xanderhal. It should be linked down below in the description. I honestly can't say I knew much about BreadTube until recently, as their rise on YouTube really came about when I was off busy having a baby, but if you don't know about them, essentially they are a very left-wing socialist sphere of YouTube. I had absolutely no intentions of debating this group, but I found it fairly entertaining when a BreadTuber reached out and challenged me to a debate immediately after I announced the release of my new children's book, The ABCs of Morality. Especially considering he challenged me to a debate on the book when he couldn't have possibly read it yet, or even known what was in it, considering I know Amazon's pretty good, but it takes more than a few minutes for...
Oh shit. Doesn't look like this is gonna be a friendly little... Yeah, we had a good time. Productive conversation. I'm glad we spoke. Kind of sounds like she got exactly what she wanted, and now she's gonna play him and BreadTube as a whole. Just say that all of BreadTube has been represented by this now.
I also know it's pretty easy to portray me as evil when you only go off of other people's analysis or their interpretations of me, but when you are reading directly from source material, my own book, my own words, it's pretty reasonable stuff. Xander ended up receiving a copy of his book, and I think he had a bit of an oh shit moment, realizing he didn't actually disagree with anything in it, even doing a stream where he complimented it and said it was...
Sorry, I want to interrupt this for 1 second. I know, I just want to watch a movie trailer. It's a bit of a non sequitur, but I think we should just watch a random movie trailer just for a wee bit, because just feeling the vibes, you know?
The word racist just means nothing to me anymore. It's been so overused that I just have no respect for that term.
To understand the alt-right, I think you do have to understand our experience. I've lived in this multicultural mess my entire life.
It really puts you on the map if you're willing to espouse views that the world finds shocking.
I could not see a single European face. Assimilate or go home.
I want to be a household name.
What's your gender?
Good question. I don't know. Mischief making.
Whites are becoming a minority in the United States quickly.
Funny that. Kind of sounds like Lauren Southern is involved in some shady stuff, if I was to listen to her own words.
All of us Europeans, we have the responsibility to reproduce. Having a family shouldn't be about personal pleasure or personal well-being. Like, that's not nationalist, that's not collectivist.
Fascinating.
Fascinating.
We're seeing our messages almost everywhere now. They've gone sort of mainstream.
Those views don't seem so fringe anymore because they're one click away on YouTube.
Hate crimes are on the rise in the US and Europe and continue to rise every year. Do you think that your rhetoric contributed to that climate?
Hail Trump! Hail our people!
Hey everybody, why am I having so much trouble editing my own Wikipedia article? Why does it keep changing like it keeps putting in alt-right? Come on, that's not me, that's not the real me.
In Charlottesville,
Those are just all
Virginia,
my friends.
a white nationalist rally descended into deadly violence and chaos.
A dead girl. That ratchets things up.
Do you
Just
feel
my
like
friends.
you have blood on your hands?
Absolutely not.
Someone died, and that was under the name of your movement.
You get so high on the likes and follows that you just keep going, and it's like a drug.
People like bad guys more than the good guys.
Things that I should have been horrified by had just become normal to me. Some help.
The governor has declared a state of emergency.
Do we even have the Charlottesville on our hands?
We're in a new age of nationalism, and we're certainly in a new age of what it means to be right-wing.
Ooh, shit. But again, in her own words, you have to hear her say it directly.
I'll leave my own words on this one. I was pleasantly surprised by the contents of this book. Not bad. It's not a bad book.
The
But
alt-right
obviously
children's
Xander
book.
had worked himself into a corner here where he had hyped up his audience on Twitter and on stream with the idea that
Holy shit. Holy shit. This whole thing is a bait and switch.
going to dunk on me on the internet, and he had to go through with the debate. And evidently came up with a tactic, which was to try to turn every book page into a topic he wanted to discuss instead of the actual page.
Clipped and shipped.
In fact, some of the topics had nothing to do with it at all. A very, very neat trick. For example, my equal opportunity page, encouraging people and children to judge everyone on the same scale, regardless of their race or gender, somehow became about black men in America being over-incarcerated.
I'm referring more to like the overrepresentation of incarceration in prisons when it comes to black people and white people, the overall socioeconomic position of black people in this country, and just generally non-white people as well. I'm talking about issues like this. Obviously, the leftover ramifications.
Can I just quickly tell you something?
Sure.
I'm not addressing any of that in this book. It's a children's book. I am certainly not trying to make any sort of hidden mention of, the incarceration rates. I'm not talking about that at all. This is literally just saying we should treat people equally, regardless of their gender or skin color, and judge them on the same scale. That's it. There's no hidden message here talking about all of these extensive subjects you've brought up here. And even if I wanted to, there couldn't be. It's a children's book. It's an extremely simplified concept. So I really think you're using this point that you don't really disagree with to go off on tons of other topics that you maybe want to discuss with me, and we can save for later when we're done the book. But there's this very funny book called Postmodern.
Okay, to people in chat asking about what is like BreadTube and stuff like that, BreadTube is a Reddit thread. Like, honestly, like, if there's going to be like some deep dive into the history of BreadTube and BreadTubers, it was a Reddit thread. It's a Reddit thread that got started where people started compiling a whole bunch of the alternatives. Like, you know, some of the early prominent ones were popping up there a lot, where like Sean, for example, ContraPoints, Abigail Thorne. They were the early people who were populating a Reddit thread where people were just trying to compile videos that weren't Sargon of Akkad, that weren't right-wingers, that weren't Jordan Peterson bodies another college student, Ben Shapiro bodies another college student. It's not like there's any, like, it's such a nebulous term. It's really hard to use it as a blanket statement, and it's just been applied to, like, it's a form of LeftTube, and it's for LeftTube, but it's BreadTube because it's based on the conquest of bread. And so you have to have read a little theory to be into the super secret special club of lefties online who make this content.
It's a collection of essays mocking modern woke literary criticisms, and its essays include topics like how the bee's stinging poo is a metaphor for anti-colonial movements, or how Piglet secretly suffers from satanic ritual abuse, which is pretty hilarious stuff, especially since it's meant to be satire. And I only bring it up because the level of reaching that Xander engaged in this debate to find messages in my silly little book of children's verses was pretty much at this exact same level. The only difference being our debate wasn't satire, it was reality. My pages on femininity and masculinity became about transgenderism somehow, which at this point...
You are making them about that, though. You cannot do this. You can't dance around like, oh, I don't have any political motivation whatsoever. It's just an innocent kid's book where I talk about the gender binary, even though the vast amount of science has dispelled this myth. But I'm still going to push it on your kids. Still going to push it on your kids.
I actually don't think he did that badly against me. I'll give him that. He was able to turn the debate to this topic by pulling out of my poem on the joys of femininity. Some girls aren't feminine, and that's okay too. If you want to be a tomboy, just be you. And saying that this was an endorsement of transgenderism and gender nonconforming children. And at this point, I really should have responded by just saying, clearly, I have no problem with people not falling into traditional gender roles. However, the debate around whether you should have life-changing surgeries is an entirely different debate that I am not even addressing a little bit in this book. But he managed to...
Like, I acknowledge that trans people exist. I know they're real. I've seen them. Yeah. I just don't want, you know, trans kids to have any kind of, like, I'm just saying, the science isn't completely sure on this one. You know, that's all I'm saying. I'm just asking some of the questions. If you want to be an adult, hey, make decisions for yourself. After all, I mean, that's the libertarian dream, right?
He managed to keep me there, and I let myself get baited into an entirely irrelevant conversation, to which ended with a conclusive Xander victory, where he informed me my study pointing out transgender suicide rates increasing post-surgery had been debunked, and continued hammering me on this point over and over again, making me look worse and worse for bringing up a debunked study.
Research extending over 30 years and conducted in Sweden, where the culture is strongly supportive of transgender individuals, documents their lifelong mental unrest. 10 to 15 years after surgical reassignment, the suicide rate of those who had undergone sex reassignment surgery rose to 20 times that of comparable peers.
Is this the is this by ncbi.nlm.nhi.gov?
Not that I can see here, no.
Can you link it to me?
This is something I've heard before from other studies, but I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, you're gonna send it to me on Discord?
I'm sending it to you on Twitter.
Oh, okay.
Remember, I'm a boomer. I don't know how Discord works.
This is just the best.
Yep, I've seen this one. So I've actually seen this study plenty, and it's been debunked overwhelmingly. So for starters,
Okay, so it doesn't agree with you, so it's been debunked.
No, you know what? Do you know who was actually? Do you know who was actually polled by this? Do you know who was actually polled in this study?
Who was polled by this?
This study polled parents, not the actual children, and those polls were taken online based on, and they like there was no like going to people's homes visiting parents. It was completely online. It was an online survey. It wasn't an actual like well-conducted study. It was terrible data collection.
I'm reading the methods right now.
It contains discharge diagnosis, up to 7 contributory diagnostics. Wait, 1 minute, sorry. Just, never mind. So it's got national registers.
That particular study has become a laughingstock among much of the scientific community. I've seen it a million times.
This was the one point everyone on Twitter or wherever said he caught me on. But it turns out he was referencing the wrong study. Watching the Xanderhal-Lauren Southern debate, and I'm very confused. Did Xanderhal confuse the Swedish transitioning study with the ROGD study? Yeah, they were talking about transitioning, and Lauren cited the Swedish study, and Xanderhal responded by giving the critique of the ROGD study, which isn't even about transitioning.
Classic.
Ostensibly because it was below the critique of the Swedish study on Bosch's doc. So I can't even give him that. I can't even give him that.
This video is so cringy too. Oh, it just sucks all around. It's just a shitty situation all around.
And is also why I would warn you all to be really careful when you hear streamers excitedly citing and debunking studies. They're usually less interested in actually finding truth and just trying to slip an own or a dunk in there, even if it's not based in fact or based on someone else's debunk list they haven't even read. We go on, and he tries to defend groupthink, suggesting he's okay with groupthink as long as it leads to a good outcome, to which I point out it's still a problem because if people don't
you know, she's lived in a lot of different places, but a little bit of that Canadian still slips in, you know? Like me, I'm sure she's tried to rid herself of the awful Canadian accent, but it finds a way. It always finds a way. It's vigilant.
Understand why they're following a group or a cause, they can very easily be convinced to pursue bad outcomes and bad causes as well. Which finally leads us to a discussion about censorship, to which Xanderhal agrees.
Oh, don't worry, she's not in America anymore. You can take some solace in the fact that she has become the thing that she hates the most. She's an immigrant, living in Australia. So she's your problem now, Aussies. Yeah. What do you think about that?
Me that censorship is traditionally bad, but disagrees to an extent that big tech is censoring people today. Which brings us to a tiff over whether big tech is fair and whether their TOS is applied appropriately. He argued that people would be fine if they just stuck to the TOS, and I argued the TOS is unfair, bringing up the example of Kaepernick supporting and promoting violence and Donald Trump's tweet, which has been interpreted as excusing the Capitol riots, where only one of those two people got banned, despite one very obviously promoting violence.
You are trying to argue that somehow Kaepernick should be absolved of this rhetoric that has led.
How many views does this video have already? 12,000. Well, that's when I started the stream. What is it at now? Oh no, it's still the same count. The most important thing I learned from this debate is that breadtubers keep sharing documents debunking studies they disagree with without having read the same studies. Very important lesson on debunking, my friends. What is this? Is the quartering writing your commentary? You threw out some blunt road spikes, you calmly stopped your car, exited, removed the spikes while you watch. Fuck. It's like now you're going to grind on the one thing. It's like, hey, got him, the entire thing. Every other point he said was also a lie. Because of this one thing that he mixed up. The one thing he mixed up means everything else he said is a lie. Don't believe it. The left will lie to you. They called him a right-wing platformer and then tried to cancel him. Bro, these people are just too funny. How this video was going to be about the people baking fresh bread, but it's about the left-wing echo chamber. It's funny that the cartoon villain tactic that she mentioned at the end was used quite literally this month with the Red Skull thing. Oh god. Oh god.
Kaepernick has shops being burned down.
For starters, Colin Kaepernick isn't the president, for one. Two, from my understanding, Colin Kaepernick didn't tweet it out.
He still has mass amount of power over people and their opinions, apparently more than the president himself, because he didn't get banned from Twitter, whereas the president has lost his voice on every platform in the country.
The president had protections, TOS protections, for years. He didn't get banned until right before he left office.
Off everything.
Yes, after he got out of office because he kept on breaking TOS.
We never saw eye to eye on this issue, which I felt was very disingenuous of Xanderhal, Because if you're going to support people being banned for violating the TOS, and the TOS clearly states you can't incite insurrections or violence, and someone is in fact encouraging violence, you can't continually just make excuses for them because you like them, and well, they're not even that famous, and well, their cause is actually important and this person's cause isn't important. No. If you support banning for TOS violations, it's as simple as that. There's no if and or buts about it. The whole point of having laws, even privately enforced ones, is that they apply to everyone. The last time that wasn't true, the people who were above the law were kings and nobility, which, to be fair, a lot of leftist celebrities certainly identify as feudal aristocrats, but it doesn't mean we should regress to feudalism to humor them.
Oh my God.
The fact that Xander had to argue for an exception to the TOS because Kaepernick wasn't as notable as Trump, even though no such exception exists in the Twitter TOS, proved my point better than any argument I could have made. The TOS is
checkmate. Checkmate. Oh yeah.
Not applied fairly, and in fact it's not possible to apply it fairly because much of what it polices is up to individual interpretation. Xander himself admitted something similar when he said that patriotism is subjective, which fair enough, but if patriotism is subjective, then insurrectionary rhetoric definitely is. So why would a socialist defend private concentrations of capital having the power to decide where the line is? Where I come from, we don't call the government outsourcing totalitarian social control to private companies socialism. We call it something else that starts with an F. Maybe I should have used that word instead of femininity in my book. And speaking of my book, that's how we ended the conversation, talking about my book, the thing he invited me on to talk about and kept trying to not talk about.
You know, like, the word socialist is inside the acronym, so clearly, you know.
The entire stream.
We disagree on that, and you know we do because you're being inconsistent, but I'm trying to move on here. Overall, you'd give the book a positive rating, it sounds like.
Yeah, I like the book. The book's pretty good.
Oh my God.
Thank you. All right.
Which ultimately, at the very end, he conceded was good and wholesome, and even dropped some mad bars. Thank you, Xander. I appreciate it. So FYI, guys, this book is so wholesome, even
there it
RedTube
is. There it is.
Disagree with
there
it. Check
it
it out
is.
on Amazon for
there
more.
It is.
It was 99% leftists. Watch.
Wow, she's having a good week. God damn.
I did not have much in the way of support and people cheering me on, more so visceral hatred. And yet still, if you go on Twitter, the conclusion of most people is that I won the debate handily. And online leftists have in fact gone on to try to cancel Xanderhal for platforming and then losing to a literal fascist, as they like to put it. And I have a very important message for all those people tearing Xanderhal apart for this. To all the leftists who are angry that Xanderhal lost.
And on top of that, she's gonna like coddle him at the very end. Oh man. Oh, this is cruel. This is cruel. Back off. He's a nice guy, all right? You know, he's a friend, all right? Play the vape clip.
You are misreading the situation. This is what happens when you overextend the word fascist to apply to even reasonable people.
You got played.
You walk into a debate expecting to argue with a cartoon character rather than a person, and you leave eating your own words. Xanderhal didn't lose to a fascist. He lost because I'm not a fascist, but you guys gaslit him into thinking I...
Well, I mean, she's just saying it out loud now. This is basically like a Marvel villain soliloquy where you're like walking around. By the way, this is what I had planned the whole time. That's right. I'm going to normalize myself. Gonna normalize myself and my beliefs. So yeah, here's just a quick little ditty, because I think I have to bring this up at this point now. One of the things the alt-right did, especially Richard Spencer, is he knew that they couldn't keep walking around saying Sig Heil, Heil Hitler, all that kind of stuff, that it wasn't, let's say, becoming. It wasn't in vogue anymore, right? They were having a hard time at it. So why don't we rebrand, all right? Why don't we stop saying these things? Instead of saying that we want the glory of the white race, or we want to talk about blood and soil, or we want to say the 14 words and all that, why don't we start saying things like, it kind of feels like white people are getting replaced. Yeah, kind of feels like the white population is being lowered. And I don't know, why don't we talk about other countries where it's really good when they have a complete pure ethno-state? Places like Japan. See, I'm not a racist. I'm praising Japan right now. Don't you see the words that are coming out of my mouth? Now you understand. We're not really, like, I want to say right-wingers. We're an alternative to the right. We're alt-right. Ooh, that has a good ring to it. Nice. Let's use that. Let's use that. Now, since Lauren Southern has come back on her little new I'm a centrist, hey, I'm no longer part of that whole great replacement stuff. Don't worry. That's stuff. I mean, I'm going to keep it up. I'm going to keep all of it up on the internet. So I'm not taking that down. I mean, come on. There's a lot of important stuff in there. A lot of really important stuff in there that people need to learn. People need to learn. I'm also going to try and change my Wikipedia. I'm going to try and edit my Wikipedia to take some of the lies out, right? They're lies, because I'm not a fascist. I'm not. I'm not a fascist. You think I'm a fascist? I'm just asking the tough questions. That's it. And now actually looking to the camera and being like, see, you were wrong about me. I'm not a fascist. I wrote a kid's book. One you can pick up now on Amazon for only $12.99. Or whatever it's costing. Fuck, I have no idea. All right, this is almost done. Let's see, Lauren Southern.
Anyways, I appreciate the book promotion. I appreciate the debate. And if you are interested, George Alexopoulos and I's new book, The ABCs of Morality, down in the link below. And the debate with Xanderhal, also down in the link below. I will see you guys next time.
This is why, like, you can't have for a second some friendly conversation where it's like, yo, can we talk about Vape Nation? What do you like? Fat poles, big rips? Cool, cool. You can't normalize Lauren Southern because that's exactly what she was looking for. And like, man, not only did she play you and then afterwards it's like, by the way, I played you. And then at the very end was like, hey, just so you know, here's the whole thing. Here's the, like, man, like 4 days ago, I laid this all out. I was like, this is exactly what she's going to try and do. And she just says the quiet part out loud as well. Like, here it is. I am normalizing myself before you, before your very eyes. Fuck, Lauren Southern sucks. Hey, do you like movies? Do you like Serfs? Do you want movies and Serfs watching the movies? So then come over to the new channels. It's the Serfs Cinema. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Can you do the thing, you know, that thumbs up and comment and all those things that help us out in the algorithm that controls every aspect of our lives? Also, if you happen to have a Facebook account, can you delete it? Like, just delete it. You should probably delete your Facebook account because it's not a great company. But hey, if you can't do that for whatever reason, I understand. And could you also go to facebook.com/thesurftimes then and give us a little like and a follow. We're just trying to push back against the fact that people like Ben Shapiro happen to dominate the platform entirely. And when everyone asks, why do older generations believe the things they believe? One of the problems is the majority of them on social media use Facebook. So to counter that, we're just going to be on there too now. Also, if you happen to have a union or a worker co-op or even a leftist project, podcast, website, Zoom, MySpace, it doesn't matter. We will advertise it for free on this channel. All you got to do is go to weareserfs.com and use the forms that we got there, weareserfs.com. Thanks, everybody.
To our gods, I'm Raft and Xander Corvus. We shall build golden idols in your honor. To our monarch, Tom Spiker. Our soft, spongy flesh is yours to command. To our lords, Evan Nudie, Trevor R., Alexander Thaler, Ryan Lubin, Bisexual Black Gamer, Tofox, and Jeffrey Lamb, we proudly carry your sigils onto the battlefield. And to our Knights of the Round Table, Riley and Anna, Poodlehawk, Multimondi, Timothy Hart, Trevor Janis, Lemmy 101, Anthropophagic, Saren 42, Chronic to Hemphog, Callie Kotka, The Great Pudini, Von Janney, Catherine, Radical Maniac, Ramon Acosta, Encosin, J. Fraser Cartwright, Jimmy Bignuts, Violent Orchard, Sophie Baby, Political Puppy, Andreas Chiringuito, Zach Christensen, Nicholas Marks, Jopi, Josh Mickelson, Melissa Murphy, Todd Buckingham, Todd LaJeunesse, and Constance Joyce Lacheris. We tip our cap and lift our mug and salute you.